Hi everyone, Mrs. Below here. I'm continuing from where I left off in the first video, going over genotype and phenotype. So question number 3 is asking, write the genotype, use the letter B for a heterozygous person with brown eyes. Brown is dominant to blue. So if the person has brown eyes, that's the dominant color, so it definitely has to be a capital B. And then since this person is heterozygous, hetero means different, so two different alleles, that means we have to have a lowercase b. If you ever come across heterozygous, you should automatically know that it will be, at least for what we're doing now, a capital letter and a lowercase letter. That will always be heterozygous, okay? Having a capital and a lowercase letter because you have two different alleles, and they will always express the dominant phenotype because they have that capital letter. All right, next it says write the phenotype, description of a trait for a P that is capital R, lowercase r, so that is heterozygous. And it says smooth P is dominant to a wrinkled P. So if this P plant has a capital R, that means that it is showing the dominant trait, which is, in this case, smooth. So this P would be smooth. The only way to have a wrinkled P would be if it was little r. That'd be the only way to have a wrinkled P. All right, so that is genotype, which is the letters or the alleles, and phenotype, which is the physical expression. Again, both of which go hand in hand with each other. All right, so here is how Mendel figured out that the foundation of genetics using his pea plants. So what he did was he crossed two plants together in the first or parent generation. They are homozygous. Okay. So he's using the letter P to represent this allele, which is flower color in a pea plant, which can be purple or white. So he did in that first generation, he did a capital P, and he crossed it with a little p. So we will get to Punnett squares eventually, but how that would work is you put both of the parents in the Punnett square like this, and then you cross them like so. Oops. And so then the first allele, or the first generation, all of them would have a capital P and a lowercase p. Now remember, you get one trait from mom, one trait from dad. Okay, now you get one chromosome from mom, one chromosome from dad. You get half of your DNA from mom, half your DNA from dad. So that means you get one allele from each parent. So in this case, this parent can only give a capital P, and this parent can only give a lowercase p. So all of the children in the first generation are going to be capital P, lowercase p, which is heterozygous. Right, capital P, lowercase p. And then what Mendel did was he crossed those together. Yes, this is inbreeding, but they're plants, so who cares? All right, and then these are the results that he got. Okay, so, and every time he did this, like he repeated this same process over and over again. And every single time he did it, he got the same ratio. So whenever we repeat this process, we cross two homozygous, in this case pea plants, we get the first generation, which are all heterozygous. If we cross the heterozygotes together, he kept getting this 3-to-1 ratio. And this happened every single time he repeated this. I mean, he collected so much data. I'm talking probably thousands of different plants, probably thousands of plants he crossed together. And because of that, he was able to conclude that the purple was dominant and overshadowing the white, which for these pea plants, that color, like purple, is dominant over white for that specific trait. So I was already talking about this with the pea plants. So law of probability. So remember, because of crossing over in the law of independent assortment, it's totally random as to what alleles or traits from each parent end up in each gamete, and it's totally random as to what gamete gets fertilized. So that is true. Okay, if we go back to meiosis, right, that crossing over, okay, and independent assortment, they both contribute to genetic variation. Okay. However, we can use the law of probability to try to predict the potential results. Okay. Now, just because you do this, like, it doesn't mean that's like exactly going to be the results every single time. Okay. Genetics, the more complex it gets, especially when we're talking about humans, you can't, predict something like that with 100% certainty. However, with Mendel's pea plants, he was able to predict the results very well with them because they were very simple organisms to work with. Humans, it's a lot different because there's a lot of things that can influence our genetics.